Pregnancy due to a work injury. Linda sat at the kitchen table and stared at her now empty coffee cup. She had been waiting patiently for today's conversation with her husband, Jim. Fortunately, their children were still at the neighbor's house and were supposed to spend the night there, so at least they wouldn't have to be here during all the screaming and yelling she knew was going to happen. It had all started with a little innocent flirting and a few meals. How could she let it get out of control? Linda had felt for over a month that something was wrong. But after the last test she took, she realized she had to tell Jim about it. He got up early and went to the store to get something, so she sat there waiting for him to return. Linda heard the sound of the front doorbell ringing and, almost simultaneously with it, the noise of a large truck in the driveway. Not expecting anyone but her husband, she figured someone had just gotten lost and was looking for directions. "Can I help you?" she said, opening the door. "Linda Gardner?" the man asked. "Yes, I'm Linda Gardner. How can I help you?" she asked again. "I have an order to pack up your belongings and move them to 815 Southwest 10th Avenue, the man told her, handing Linda a clipboard while shouting to the 4 men in the truck to start unloading boxes. "There must have been some kind of mistake. I've never placed an order like this before," Linda told him, handing the papers back. "Yes, miss, I know. The order was placed by Mr. Jim Gardner a week ago," he replied, showing her Jim's signature at the bottom of the sheet. "Look, my husband will be back soon, and I'm sure he can clear up this misunderstanding," Linda replied. "Mrs. Gardner, I just heard from your husband. 20 minutes ago, he told me to give you this envelope if you would prevent me," he said, holding out a large manila envelope to Linda. "Now, if you don't mind, would you mind showing us the master bedroom? We've only been given 1 hour to get this job done." Linda opened the envelope and glanced briefly at the piece of paper. In almost a whisper, she told the worker, "The first room is at the top of the stairs on the right." The men hurried up the stairs and for the next 40 minutes were busy packing and hauling box after box to the truck in the driveway. Every now and then they tried to ask Linda a question, but she was silent, mentally somewhere else, so they just did the best they could. 50 minutes after their appearance, they announced that they were finished and ready to leave. "I'll need your signature, Mrs. Gardner," the head worker asked. Linda scribbled something at the bottom of the paper, and they left. Exactly 10 minutes later, Linda's father showed up. "Honey," Ken said, looking at his astonished daughter. "Jim asked me to pick you up, knowing that you probably won't be able to drive yourself," he explained. "Your mom's waiting for me and the movers to take your stuff. We'll put it all in the garage for now and then we'll deal with it," Ken said to Linda as he led her out of the house. "This can't be happening," Linda said out loud as Ken helped her into the car. "Where's Jim? If Jim were here, I could straighten out this whole mess with him," she thought to herself. "He'd listen to me, wouldn't he?" Half an hour later, Jim returned to the house, but with a locksmith. "Change all the locks, including the garage door opener code," he instructed the locksmith. "Leave me 5 sets of keys and don't forget to lock the side door of the garage," he told him as he entered his now empty house. Going upstairs, he found that the men had done a pretty decent job considering the schedule he had given them. Looking at his watch, he realized that he only had 15 minutes until the next truck arrived. Grabbing a couple empty boxes, he finished loading the rest of the things the movers had missed, including her makeup and stuff from the bathroom vanity. As he carried the last 2 boxes, the next truck pulled up. His sister Donna got in with the movers. "Hey, girl," Jim said as he hugged his sister. "Why don't you take over the second bedroom on the left next to the bathroom? It's much bigger than the spare room and it has a walk-in closet," he told her. "We'll move the kids' stuff later." "No problem. What are you going to do with Linda's car?" "Her dad has to pick it up tonight after he's done with the movers," he told her. "Let me take care of things for a while. I'm going to stop by the office for a minute. And get us some pizza for tonight," Jim said as he headed toward the garage. "Just no mushrooms," Donna said as she showed the workers where to put everything. "Right on schedule," Jim said as he looked at his watch. From his car, he could see his three best friends having a heated discussion with David, his wife's co-worker, and he didn't look happy. About 5 minutes later, Bob, one of the three men, walked over to where Jim's car was parked. He thought we were joking until I pulled out my knife. I offered him two options: disappear within 24 hours or see his dignity surgically removed and not in a hospital. I told him we'd be back tomorrow to find out his decision, Bob said, grinning. How are you doing, buddy? You holding up? I'll be better tomorrow, Jim replied sadly. I never thought I'd have to go through something like this, but I'll survive. Okay, I gotta go now. I'll see you later at my house. Jim collected copies of the photos and receipts the detective had left in his office Friday afternoon, while a shocked Jim ran around him. He knew what was in the envelopes, and he wasn't even going to look at them. He just needed them for his lawyer. Yeah, $1,000 down the drain, he thought to himself as he looked at the bill. Leaving the envelope at his lawyer's office, Jim grabbed 4 pizzas, a case of beer, and headed home. He planned to get drunk one last time, because after tonight, he would be a single father, and in the future he would only need to set the right example for his children, not like his soon-to-be ex-wife's example. By the time Jim returned, the truck was gone, and Donna and a few of her friends were setting up her new bedroom. "Hey, brother," Donna greeted Jim as he went upstairs. "Where's all that help you promised me?" she asked. "The guys are finishing up something for me and should be here in about an hour. Why don't we take a break and eat something in the meantime?" he suggested to Donna and her friends. Bob and his other buddies finally showed up just before 4 p.m. And by 7 p.m., everyone was sitting in Donna's room, drinking beer and catching a breeze through the open window. Everyone except Jim. Donna found her brother in the basement watching old home movies. "We've got everything upstairs in my room and everyone's already eaten. Why don't I get you something to eat?" she asked. "Not right now, dear, but thanks for asking," Jim replied. "I just need some alone time, that's all." "Well, I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything," Donna told him. Then she kissed her brother on the top of his head and left, closing the door behind her. I had no idea this was going to happen, Jim thought again. How could I have been so blind? A little over a month ago, while paying bills online, Jim came across a bill for a checkup at a local clinic. "Honey, did you go to the doctor?" he shouted to his wife, who was cooking dinner in the kitchen. "I thought I had the flu, so I went for a B12 shot," she yelled back. "Their rates are amazing," he said under his breath. $125 for an exam and a B12 shot with insurance. We should call them tomorrow. There must be a mistake on the bill, he thought to himself. But there was no mistake. "Billing department, please," Jim asked, calling the clinic from his office the next day. "What can I do for you?" the girl asked in reply. "Good morning. My wife, Linda Gardner, was at the clinic 2 weeks ago, and I think we overpaid for her visit. She had a routine checkup and a B12 shot," he explained to her. "But we were billed $125, whereas insurance should have charged no more than $45. A short pause followed. "Linda Gardner, right?" the girl asked. "That's right," Jim replied. "Sir, she was given a B12 shot, but in addition to the injection, she also had blood work and additional tests," she told him. "Blood tests and additional tests? What kind of tests?" he asked. "I'm sorry, sir. We are not allowed to divulge such information," the girl replied. "Look, miss, Linda is my wife, and I'm not asking about the test results. I just want to know which ones we're talking about," Jim said, starting to get a little annoyed. "Okay, since you're her husband, it was a complete blood count and a pregnancy test." "Well, thank you very much for the information. I'll pay the bill in full," Jim told her after hearing the answer. "Is it safe to say he had a heart attack? Why was Linda doing a pregnancy test if he had a vasectomy right after she had her second child? It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what was going on. Linda had always had some kind of problem with any type of birth control they tried, and she was adamantly opposed to abortion. It's murder, no matter how you look at it, she told him. So, after the miss that gave them their second daughter, Jim decided to become a sniper. The surgery eliminated the possibility of the next mistakes and took the abortion issue off the table. At least that's what Jim had thought until that moment. 10 minutes later, he was sitting at his desk, flipping through the yellow pages looking for a private investigator. He'd had no reason to doubt Linda's loyalty before, but now he no longer knew what to believe. Jim had never realized that keeping tabs on his wife would cost so much, but there was no other choice. She always comes home at the same time, and except for the occasional team-building seminar, she always works in the office, he told the detective. I need you to start immediately because I'm going crazy knowing she's cheating on me, and I damn well need to know who with. The next call Jim made was to his good friend who worked in the same division as Linda. Dan, this is Jim Gardner, he began. I have a huge favor to ask of you. If you don't mind, I need to talk to you outside of work. Can you meet me at Tony's Cafe after work? Great. I'll see you around 5:30. Jim wasn't quite sure how to approach Dan with such a request, but decided that since they had known each other for a long time, a direct approach would be best. They were sipping their beers when Jim sighed. Dan, I just found out that Linda is cheating on me. I think it's someone she works with. It's probably been going on for at least a couple months, and I need to find out who it is. Dan was stunned. Linda would never do that to you, Jim. There must be some kind of mistake. There's no mistake, Dan. I have proof. I just need to know who it is. Jim, we're a small company, and I know most of the employees by name, Dan told him. There's the usual office flirting game, but nothing more. Look, there are 2 people in the office who owe me a lot, and they always know everything if something is going on. Trust me. I'll call you if I hear anything. I'm sorry to hear that about Linda. No more so than about me, Jim replied. The next 3 days sucked. Jim wanted to grab Linda, shake her, and ask why. But her answer didn't matter anymore. Their love life wasn't great, but it wasn't bad either. They had sex about twice a week. Jim thought that was pretty good with 2 kids. Linda never talked about anything new she wanted to try in bed, and still turned Jim down for other things he always asked for. So nothing had changed. The only thing he could remember was that when Linda came home from her monthly seminars, they never had sex that evening. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But now he was looking for something out of the ordinary. The seminars were always held on Friday afternoons at the Best Western Hotel and lasted about 2 hours. Afterward, many employees would visit the bar for happy hour instead of dinner. On those nights, Jim would take the kids out for a snack or stay at his parents' house for dinner. They wouldn't see Linda until 8 p.m., the time she would return home. He was now questioning everything in his marriage, trying to figure out the reason why Linda had started cheating on him. Friday morning, Dan called. If she's cheating with anyone at work, it's with a new guy named David Collins. He joined us last year. Rumor has it that they've had lunch together a couple of times and that they were seen dancing during happy hour, he informed Jim. I know that's not exactly what you were looking for, but it's all I could find out. Hopefully you 2 can work it out. Thanks for the information, but I don't think there's much chance of that happening. Jim called the detective and gave the name Dan had told him, closed up store, and went home. How he was supposed to play the role of normal, loving husband when all he wanted to do was kick her out of the house and continue on alone with his now ruined life. On weekends, he and Linda did the usual family things, yard work, soccer practice for the kids, and the traditional Sunday barbecue with the neighbors. Linda wanted to make love Saturday night, but Jim informed her that his stomach was a little upset and turned away from his wife and fell asleep. There was no way he was ever going to have sex with that fool again. Jim thanked God for Monday. Work was now his refuge away from home, where he could relax and put the rest of his plans in motion. The last thing he needed to do was to get the divorce papers moving. He had already selected an attorney and paid his fee. He agreed to prepare no-fault divorce papers. Since he and Linda both worked, he asked for a 50-50 split of their assets with no alimony. What was non-negotiable was that Jim should get custody of their 2 girls. If Linda didn't agree to his custody, he would change the reason for the divorce to adultery and send proof of the affair to everyone who knew her. He knew that once he got the papers, Linda would freak out, so he asked for and got a restraining order. She could call the girls, but she couldn't come within 75 feet of the house. By Tuesday, the private investigator had the information, including room receipts. Both were from the Best Western, where Linda's Friday night seminars were held. The receipts were in David's name. The detective also obtained surveillance photos of Linda and her lover entering the room holding hands, and one of the shots showed them kissing in the hallway. Jim said he had no desire to look at the photos. He told the detective to just put everything in a manila envelope and take it to his office. He thanked him for his quick work and told him the check would be mailed by Tuesday. By Friday, everything was ready to go. Arrangements had been made with the neighbors about the kids for the weekend. Both sets of movers were scheduled. The locksmith was to be finished by 2 p.m. Finally, all the paperwork was to be finalized on Monday and delivered Tuesday afternoon. Linda has no idea what's going on, Jim thought to himself, and he wanted to keep it that way. Linda's story. I was sitting at the kitchen table feeling sorry for myself when the movers came to the door. I told them to wait until Jim got back, but when their oldest handed me the envelope, I saw what was inside and knew immediately that Jim knew everything. In the envelope was a copy of the pregnancy test I had taken at the clinic. Then at first I thought I had the flu like everyone else, but the malaise just held on and wouldn't go away. I didn't have any body aches, I just felt a little off. One morning, Carol made a joke. "It looks like you're pregnant again, Linda. That's when it first occurred to me that it might be true." When David showed up at our office, I had just turned 30 and was beginning to feel like an old married woman. I helped adapt him, and he was always a nice young man, smelled great and everything. David really always looked good all the time. Even though he was 5 years younger, we realized we liked the same music and Mexican food was our favorite cuisine. Soon after, we started going out to lunch together at a local Mexican restaurant and meeting for drinks after our seminars. One Friday night, after a team-building workshop, music was playing and he asked me to dance. We danced to 2 fast songs and the third was slow. I hadn't slow danced with anyone since I got married, but with David it seemed so natural. We floated around the dance floor and when the song ended, we sat back down to our group. I was hot. It felt so good in his arms. I didn't want the music to end. After 2 drinks, I considered it a good idea to head home. That night, I almost fell in love with Jim. No, I wasn't doing anything crazy. I just needed sex and lots of it. I knew I should have cut off contact with David, but I loved being around him. Other than dancing and a few dinners, I wasn't doing anything wrong, at least I thought so at the time. It wasn't until the 4th Friday meeting that things got a little out of hand. Our department received an award for having worked the best month in the company, and we were each given a $100 bonus. Of course, we went to the bar to celebrate the bonus. 2 hours later, there were only 4 of us left. I had too much to drink and told David that I needed to go to a restaurant and get some coffee before I tried to drive home. He kindly joined me. On the way to the coffee, I stumbled unexpectedly, and David managed to pick me up before I fell to the floor. As a result, one of his hands was around my waist, and the other was holding my breasts. "Are you okay?" he asked, lifting me to my feet. I don't know what, I was thinking. Instead of answering, I just looked him in the eyes and kissed him on the lips. It caught him off guard, but a second later he was already kissing me back. It seemed like hours passed before I pulled away and blushed. "I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that," I said to David. "Please forgive me." "Don't worry about it, Linda," he replied with a chuckle. "I'll just consider it a thank you for saving your life. Now let's get you some coffee." And he took me to the restaurant. For the next week, I tried to stay away from David as much as possible. I found myself working at lunchtime and didn't stay for happy hour on Friday. It was especially awful when I found myself going crazy every time I imagined being in David's arms. Thinking about him was my mistake. 2 weeks later, I stayed for happy hour. Jim wasn't due home until 8:30 p.m., so I planned dinner and drinks with a few of my coworkers. That night, everyone seemed to have an excuse not to stay in company for long. By 6:30 p.m., it was just me and David at the table. "Let's grab a bite to eat, shall we?" he suggested. At this point, the music started playing, and I asked David to dance with me. For some reason, the musicians played 4 slow songs in a row, and we danced them all. My heart was almost bursting out of my chest as we glided across the floor. I felt so good in his arms. How we ended up in the backseat of his car, I have no idea. We did everything but have sex. It was almost 8 p.m. before we realized what time it was. After fixing my dress and hair, I kissed him one more time and headed to my car. I should have been embarrassed, but for some reason I didn't feel that way. I was still in the aftertaste after experiencing the rapture 3 times. The guilt didn't encompass me until I saw my husband and kids. Jim wanted to have sex that night, but I couldn't even look at him, let alone make love to him. After about a 45-minute shower, I slid into bed and just cuddled with him for the rest of the night. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't stop. I was hooked. Now we started seeing each other again during lunch. God, I was in such a hurry to see David again. A week later, he told me he had booked a room for Friday night at the Best Western in case I wanted some alone time with him after the seminar. We left the bar separately and met in the hallway outside the room. "Are you sure you want to do this?" David asked. "I'm not sure, but let's get out of the hallway before someone sees us," I asked. We hadn't been in the room more than 10 seconds when we started ripping each other's clothes off. Then we made love to him. Afterwards, laughing with pleasure, he rolled over and fell on the bed next to me and kissed my lips passionately. "It was nice. It was really nice," he told me, as he continued kissing me. We had sex one more time, and then took a shower together. Afterward, we got dressed and separately slipped out of the room so we wouldn't be seen together. I made it home 45 minutes before Jim and the kids arrived. David and I went out 2 more times before I felt sick with what I thought was the flu. When Carol joked about my pregnancy, I panicked and went to the doctor. I didn't believe, or didn't want to believe, the results, that I was pregnant. David had always used protection and Jim was infertile after the surgery. Looking at the copy of the results in the envelope, I realized I was being used. In so many ways. So Linda sat in the kitchen waiting for Jim to return. She was preparing herself to tell her husband her news. It was then that her world crumbled around her. Her marriage was over. What followed revealed that Jim wanted his pound of revenge from each of them. He wanted David out of town so he would never have to see his face again, and he wanted Linda to suffer for what she had done to their happy family. His unmarried sister Donna was moving into their home to help him with the 2 girls. What did he even know about raising girls and women's issues? His parents were always there to support him, and he knew it wouldn't be easy, but they would all survive. Sunday night, Jim sat the girls down next to Donna and explained that he and their mom were having problems and that Aunt Donna was going to stay with them for a while. Jim told them that they could see their mom whenever they wanted. It was just that Mom wasn't going to live with them anymore. They all cried and hugged, but a big bowl of ice cream helped them get over the bad news. Linda was served on Tuesday, and although she called my cell phone about 20 times, I had nothing more to say to her. When she called home, she was answered by Donna. My sister also tried to explain to her that it was over, but she wouldn't listen. I canceled all of our joint credit cards, dropped her from my insurance and retirement account, and did everything else necessary in the divorce. However, on Wednesday, I let her see the kids. Donna took the girls to meet their mother at our parents' house and was there until Linda left. I didn't see Linda until we all sat down with the attorneys in their office. Linda's attorney started off by demanding this and that. When he started talking about Linda having full custody of the children, I got up and said I was leaving. "We just started? Where are you going?" he wondered. "I'm only going to say this once," I replied quietly. "The terms are what they are. Linda will be able to see the kids whenever she wants, but I will have physical custody. She is carrying someone else's child, and my children will not witness the birth of her illegitimate child. Fight me on this or anything else, and I will tell the world what my soon-to-be ex-wife really is. So I suggest you think about this long and hard before you open your mouth again. We took a short break to cool off. After meeting again, Linda said she agreed to all my terms and all the papers were signed. I'm truly sorry, Jim. I don't know why I let this happen. I've always loved only you. My now ex-wife sobbed. I guess not enough, I replied. As I walked away, I turned around and looked at Linda. Since you were both confused at the team-building seminar, maybe you can get compensation from the firm for a work-related injury. I grinned and walked away for the last time. The end! Subscribe to my channel. Thank you!